Okay guys, so now that we've learned a little bit about logs and some things you can do with them, we're going to start to solve some equations with logs. Now these are going to be kind of similar to what happened with our trig equations when we were solving those, is because every one of these is going to be a little bit different, and we're going to have to go about solving each one a little bit of a different way. Now one thing that you'll see that's going to be really helpful a lot of times is like this first example. If I have logs that are not condensed, it's going to be a little bit easier if I actually go ahead and condense those together. So for example, this first one I have here, first I can take that 2 and move that as the exponent on the 4. So I can rewrite that as log base 3 of 4 squared, which is 16. What I also can do, because those are the same base, and those logs are subtracted, I can divide those arguments. So I can rewrite that as log base 3 of 8. So now if you look at my original equation here, this tells me that log base 3 of x has to equal log base 3 of 8. And the only way for that to be possible is if x is equal to 8. Another strategy you guys might see that's going to come up a lot is something like this next one, where I'm going to want to rewrite this in exponential form. So if I rewrite this in exponential form, 3 squared is going to give me 2x minus 3. Then at this point, this is really just a basic algebraic equation. So I know that 9 equals 2x minus 3, which means that 12 is equal to 2x, which means that x has to equal 6. So now if we look at our next example, okay, this one we actually might need to use both those strategies. So to start off, I have 2 logs added together, so I'm going to go ahead and condense those into 1 log. So it's going to be the same thing as the log of x plus 2 times x minus 1, and that's going to equal 1. Now if I rewrite this in exponential form, remember if there's no base written, that base is 10. So 10 to the first power is equal to x plus 2 times x minus 1. And if I actually do this math here, that's going to mean that 10 is equal to x squared plus x minus 2. And now I have a quadratic equation. So we know the easiest way to solve a quadratic equation is set it equal to 0 and then factor. So this equation is going to factor into x plus 4 and x minus 3, which means my 2 possible zeros are x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 3. Now there's one thing we need to be careful of though in a case like this. I know that the argument of a log, if I have log base whatever of some number, I know the argument can never be a negative number. So since that argument can never be a negative number, if I were to plug in these x's into my original equation, if I plug in negative 4, that's going to give me a negative number. So even though I get negative 4 with the algebra, it's actually not going to be part of my solution. So the only answer that could work would be positive 3. Alright, now my last example I have here is one that we're going to go ahead and write out. We're not actually going to find the exact value of our answer though until we start to use a calculator. So if I get a problem like this, the first thing I want to try and do is see if I can write these 2 exponents with the same base. Okay, so if I had a different, let's say if this number was a 9 instead. If this was a 9, it would be a little bit easier because I could rewrite these with the same base. And I could solve for x. Okay, the problem here though is I can't actually write 7 and 3 with the same base. So what I need to do is I need to rewrite these as logs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the log of both sides. So I'm going to say the log, natural log of 3 to the x plus 2 is equal to the natural log of 7. Then what I can do using algebra or using my log rules is I can move that x plus 2 to the front. So now I have x plus 2 times the natural log of 3. And now I just need to solve for x and get x by itself. So in order to do that, I could distribute. What's going to be a little bit faster here is just to go ahead and divide by the natural log of 3. So I get x plus 2 is equal to the natural log of 7 over the natural log of 3. And then my last step to get x by itself would just be to subtract 2. So my final answer would be the natural log of 7 divided by the natural log of 3 minus 2. Now if I actually had a calculator, I could go ahead and evaluate that and get an actual decimal answer. But sometimes we're going to work these without calculators, and we're just simply going to want to write our answers in terms of log or natural log. And remember, we can rewrite, when we take that log, it could be a natural log or a regular log. So if I wanted to, from the start, I could have just made this regular log. You'd get the same answer either way when you type that in. And so it's just a matter of preference with those. Alright, so that's just a few examples of how you can solve some log equations. Remember, every one of these is going to be a little bit different. So just try a couple different strategies to get your answer.